might as well be. What? Marcus Welby? What?
First of all, let me say that when we did the second Anchor Watt record, me and Danny and David Nuss did that record. And we were all living in different cities. I was in Corpus for part of the time, in Austin part of the time. Danny was in Austin going to school, and David Nuss was in Nashville going to school. And so I wrote the songs and recorded them on the cassette tapes and sent cassette tapes to David and to Danny. And then we were supposed to do the record over Christmas break, and the only time we actually got together to rehearse the songs before we went into the studio was at Thanksgiving. So yeah, we got together one day for like 8 hours, and we kind of hashed out the songs. And that was the only rehearsal for those songs before we went in and recorded over Christmas, did that Corpus Christi record. And so then when we were about to do the third record, the third Anchor Watt record, Danny had met Bill, who was the singer from the Skatenigs in Austin, and introduced me to him, and Bill wanted to get into producing records. And we were still so, new at this. We didn't know what the fuck a producer did, because when we went in and recorded shit, we just said, this is what we want it to sound like. So in essence, we were producing our own record, right? But Bill said, listen, if you let me produce your record, we can do it in Chicago at this studio, blah, blah, blah. I'll put it all together, blah, blah, blah. So we're like, okay, yeah, whatever. And, that's kind of always been my downfall, was the idea that I only ever gave a fuck about the creative part, like writing the songs and doing the artwork for the record, covers and shit like that. I should have been paying more attention to the business end of it.
Yeah.
But that's kind of never been my talent or my ability, and so I've gotten fucked out of a shit ton of money over the years, but that's how it goes.
Yeah.
So anyway, we go up. We were supposed to go into the studio right after Ministry was finished with recording. What is that fucking record called? Nobody ever knows what it's called. They were supposed to be finished with their record by the time we got to Chicago. Well, when we got to Chicago, not only were they not finished with their record, they weren't even half finished recording it. So it kind of, in a way, we're like, well, what the fuck are we supposed to do? So Al was, what we'll do, because you guys can use all of our gear. We're just going to leave all our shit set up. He said, we'll work for 24 hours or 48 hours or 36 hours or whatever. Then when we're done, you guys can come in and work for, 12 or 24 hours or 36 hours or whatever. And we'll just keep the studio on a swing shift. That way they didn't have to rip down any of their shit, and we got to use all their gear.
Hell yeah.
So, yeah, it was a good deal, and we ended up hanging out in their sessions, and they ended up hanging out in our sessions, and
wow.
So not only that, but our budget for that record was probably like $12,000 or something crazy, small like that. Not much money at all, but I would say we probably spent, the amount of time that we spent in that studio was probably like $20,000 worth of studio time, which ended up getting charged to Ministry's label.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
they're on Warner Brothers, I believe, right?
Yeah, that's right. They were on Warner's back
And this
then.
was for Psalm 69, I believe, was that.
That's right. Yeah. Psalm 69. Yes, exactly. So we were in sessions for that shit. Now, let me tell you, dude, I saw some stuff. That was kind of my first exposure to some of the crazy shit that you hear about in terms of the, world of fucking metal and rock and roll or whatever, showbiz. I mean, crazy shit.
Yeah. To be a fly on the wall there. To be a fly on the wall, that must have been so crazy, man.
Oh, yeah, totally. Because, I mean, I had, I grew up in a situation in Houston and in Austin where there was a lot of drugs, right? So I've been around a lot of shit. I am not proud of my history in terms of my drug use through my teenage years, but, I was an IV drug user really early in my life, in my teenage years.
Yeah. And
did a lot of shit that was really fucked up, a lot of really stupid stuff. And I'd seen some, pretty crazy stuff, but nothing like what I saw with fucking, Al and those guys. And I was sober at that time. Luckily, I probably wouldn't be here now, So, yeah, it was, but there's also, Danny and I spent Christmas dinner at Al's house. He invited us over for Christmas dinner because we were there over the holidays, and everybody knew we didn't have anywhere to go. You know what I mean? So he had us over, which was really fucking cool. And a bizarre side point to that story is I've had Christmas dinner with Al like 3 times. I don't know how that always happened, but it has happened over the years.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Do you have a?
But yeah. So that's how that record came about, and recording and all that. And to be honest, Phil, he didn't do a lot of. I mean, in retrospect, there wasn't a lot of producing that went on. It was still, me and Danny going, this is what we wanted to sound like, so.
So I think it's kind of I don't know, like ironic or what the word is, but for someone who didn't really have intentions of, recording music, you seem to have changed it up quite a bit, man. Like, you never really repeated the same album more than once. Like, even with SKREW, everyone's a little different.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, you're if you're going to be recording and making this art, like you said, you care about it. Can you tell us a little bit about how and why, like, the sounds changed?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's kind of. I'm glad that you brought that up because I think that's a really important point to touch on. I don't think I've ever repeated myself, but I also kind of think that, or at least I've been told that you can still tell it's the same person doing the material, and it's primarily because there's bands that have made careers out of kind of rehashing the same shit over and over again. I'll give you a good example: is DRI.
Yeah.
When you buy a DRI record, you know what you're going to get. It's going to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not not saying there's anything wrong with that.
Oh,
That's
for
just
sure. Yeah.
who those guys are, where they're at.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've never really considered myself a musician as much as a creative person that uses sound to create art.
Yeah.
My therapist says that I'm just not willing to take credit for my level of musical ability, and maybe that's the case. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I've always looked at it like, why would I want to do the same thing over and over again? It's kind of like sometimes I'll put down the guitar for, weeks and weeks on end, and then I pick it up and I feel like kind of reinvigorated and I'm playing different things than I played before. So, that record, it's just kind of where I was at the time. And I'll tell you, one of the things that I tried to do on that record, every record that I've ever done, I've always tried to include other people in the writing process. Like in Anchorwatt, but nobody ever, there was no writers. Because I was always trying to encourage people to be creative, and it just, for whatever reason, it never seemed to work. And so, all that shit, I wrote all of that Anchorwatt stuff. I wrote all of that fucking SKREW shit. But the point is that, that last SKREW record, I tried to really, at least include people's opinions. You know what I mean? Like if in terms of writing that record, and it was kill. It's it always ends up being like I'm just doing it all myself. So doing a solo record at this point, which is kind of one of the things that I'm working on right now, it's just going to sound like everything else I've ever done because.
Yeah. One question I had, I know that Angel Seed, it got kind of branded. Yeah. It got kind of branded as like new metal, I guess. With how much of a conscious decision was that to take that direction?
So yeah, a lot of people a lot of people. I have heard that before, that people branded it new metal, but at the time that we wrote that, I don't know, who was doing new metal or what was new metal.
For sure.
My focus on doing that record was to keep things kind of focused, and I'm still not sure why it's thought of as new metal, but I guess because the previous record, Shadow of Doubt, had been kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
And there was some like heavy shit, there was some crazy shit, there's, all kinds of stuff on it. It's weird because recently I've listened to that record a few times in the last couple months and kind of have started reappreciating that Shadow of Doubt record. So when I did the Shadow of Doubt record, that record was about halfway written, and I was in a really fucked up car crash. Yeah. This guy long story short, I got hit head on I-35 driving through New Braunfels on a Saturday morning at like 10:30 a.m.
Oh, wow.
And and so I was on a lot of medication after that wreck because I had some pretty major injuries. So once I got back into the studio to write what became Shadow of Doubt, I scrapped everything that had previously been written and started writing from scratch. And so that's why that record came out the way it did, I think, is because I was on a lot of medication, just a lot of painkillers, and I was trying to take them as directed. I wasn't like in relapse yet, but I did get into relapse shortly thereafter. And so by the time the Angel Seed record was being recorded, some of that material was material that had not made it onto the Shadow of Doubt record.
Okay.
And in fact, some of it was even songs that hadn't made it onto the Burning in Water record.
Oh,
even.
Wow. Really?
Yeah, so it was kind of there was a lot of new stuff written, a lot of stuff there were a few things that were old, and then also we did a lot of writing in the studio on that record. And I was, sending this kid that was the one of the second engineers in the studio. We did that record in at the studio right by El Paso, and right on the border with Juarez.
Oh, wow.
And so I was getting a lot of cough medicine out of Mexico, like this heavy-duty codeine-based cough medicine, and drinking it, cutting it with Sprite or, something like that, which later I found out is people were doing in Houston called syrup or something like that.
Yeah, the syrup. Yeah.
Yeah, right. But I had no idea. It was just, what I was doing at the time.
Yeah.
But, that record, I think there's some cool stuff on that record. All of the material that I've done in the past, I can't really compare, and so it's all held at an equal level of esteem, except for...
Yeah, that's a good one.
But the Angel Seed record, I don't know. I think maybe it was just the time that it came out. That's what, I don't know. I think sometimes, like when we did the first SKREW record, a lot of people thought of that as, oh, this is something new. This is like industrial and metal all coming out at the same time. And, there were a couple other bands that were doing it at the same time, but nobody I'd ever heard of, or we didn't know of each other. So I think that there's sometimes it's just like I don't know what it is, but like a common direction that's happening in the, energy of the universe or something that makes people do things a certain way. Like, like the first SKREW record, I can't think of anybody at the time that, or right now, that was doing the same thing, but I know that there was this Finnish band that they were kind of doing something similar at the same time. I'd never heard of them. They'd never heard of us,
Oh, wow.
So it's just, I think it's just, the way things happen. Well, I'll say this, that so I was sober for about 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then I relapsed. And I relapsed for about 5 years.
Oh, wow.
And that record was done kind of towards the beginning of my relapse. And so I was not in great shape. My least favorite record that I've ever done. And I don't think I've ever told anybody about this before, but I'm going to give you kind of a hookup on some new information.
Awesome.
I fucking hate the Dusted record. Oh. I hate that record.
Why is that?
And I'll tell you why. It was that record was, man, it was a terrible experience recording that album because I literally, so after Burning in Water, we toured nonstop for like a year. And our first tour was probably 4 or 5 months after that record came out. So that record, the Burning in Water album, had been out for like 18 months, and with a year straight of touring. And the last tour for Burning, ended in Chicago on a Friday night. And we were booked to start recording to set the next record Monday morning. And so I literally had no break from the action,
Wow.
Saturday and Sunday. That was it.
No shit.
And yeah, and I had hardly anything written for the record. And, it's weird but I just now thought of this. This is the first time I've thought about this, but the two guys that produced that record are dead now. Howie wasn't there for most of it. He was supposed to be producing it, but he wasn't there for most of the time because his band was getting some notice, and so he was really focused on that. And Matt, I was in a really terrible place. I was hooked up with 2 different girls that were both like, I'm not kidding, it was like making me crazy. And I totally like fucked one of them over big time. Yeah, it was just not it was the worst experience. And, what I should have done is taken, a few weeks off before I started doing that. But, on the other hand, a buddy of mine at the time, Brian Leesgang, who had been in 9 Inch Nails and later was in Filter, he came in and was like super helpful because he saw I was having a hard time. So he came in and was, he was there. It was really cool of him to do that. So, oh man, I had to kick guys out of the band, and that was fucking sick. But I remember Thought Industry, and I remember the talk. I think I communicated with their drummer for some reason, and then he ended up playing live or doing a tour with Godflesh. I don't remember, but here's the thing about record labels. The entire recording industry was basically started much in the same way as the film industry was. And it was all like, you know how the film industry started? It started in New York in the 1890s when they had these machines you'd put a coin in, and then you'd put your eyes up to the thing and you'd turn a handle, and it would flip these pictures real fast to make it look like it was moving. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, just like any vending machine, those things were all run by mobsters.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Right? By, organized crime. So, when those things advanced from those kind of machines to actual movie cameras, it was still run by the mafia, by mobsters, organized crime. And the same thing with music. When they first were able to record music, it wasn't even records. It was like on these things that were shaped like a tube and with wires. And, it was all, because what would happen would be they would, these guys would get like some old black man to come in and record some songs, him playing guitar and singing, and they'd pay him, $5.
Yeah.
And then they'd take these recordings and they would sell them all over the country and make, thousands of dollars. Well, the guy who wrote the song and recorded it didn't make anything except for that initial money.
Yeah.
But that's how the recording industry started. So the recording industry was, until the last, 20 years, by nature, the relationship between the label and the artist is one that is adversarial, right? So everybody makes money before the artist does. That's just the nature of the business. Now, because of the internet now and the way things have gone, remember when, Lars Ulrich got into a big lawsuit with the dude that first introduced file sharing, song sharing on the internet. Whoops, do you remember that? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, Napster?
Yes, Napster, thank you. That changed the music industry. Nobody makes money except for people like, Michael Jackson or, these superstars. What's that chick that writes about all her boyfriends?
I know who you're talking about.
Taylor Swift.
Taylor Swift.
Yeah. People like that make money from selling records.
Yeah.
But nobody, certainly nobody at the level of even Ministry. Ministry doesn't make any money from selling records anymore.
No shit.
They have to, Al has to tour in order to make a living.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons why, back in the early 2000s, I kind of made a decision that, if I was going to do anything else in life besides play music, I had to make some decisions, right?
Yeah.
One is that I, wasn't going to be devoted to touring, and you can't make money selling records. So, in a way, it did me the favor of bringing it back to the point of where now I play music because it's what I love. But it also enables me to do other things that are important to me as well. Like, I write. I've been writing movies for the last 20 years. I haven't had anything produced, but that doesn't matter. It's, for me, writing movies is the same as making music. It's what brings me joy. It's, it feeds my soul. The other thing is I really wanted to be a dad someday. And, I was married in the 90s. And, you can't be a dad and be a father and tour.
Yeah.
And in fact, I couldn't even be a husband and tour. It just was impossible. And so, that marriage ended up breaking up. And, I never became a dad. And I, quite frankly, had pretty much given up on the idea of, even though I always wanted to be a father, of being a father. And then next thing I know, I became a dad. My son was born 2 weeks after I turned 50.